In this episode, you will see statistics of catastrophic melting of glaciers, fire beyond the Arctic Circle. What do all honest scientists all over the world warn about? What are the ways out of this situation?
Sea level rise is like an invisible tsunami, building force while we do almost nothing, said Benjamin Strauss, a representative of Climate Central Research Organization. We have a closing window of time to prevent the worst by preparing for higher seas. Glaciers covering 10% of the Earth's surface play a key role in maintaining the planet's climate balance. Glaciers on Earth are distributed very unevenly. The giant ice continent of Antarctica contains almost 90% of the total mass. Greenland contains a little more than 8%. The total water supply on planet Earth is 1,390 million cubic kilometers. Glaciers contain 70% of fresh water. Fresh water from melting glaciers in the northern hemisphere passes through the Arctic Ocean and enters the North Atlantic. There, it affects the global circulation of ocean waters. Melted fresh water will cover the upper layer of the ocean, since the fresh water is lighter than seawater. This will cause the slowdown or complete stop of the Gulf Stream. In addition, mountain glaciers feed many rivers in different parts of the planet Earth. Since mountain glaciers are rapidly melting, this can lead to a reduction of drinking water supplies. It's no secret that glaciers are melting and faster than scientists expected. Every day we meet glacier news. In some parts of the world, glaciers breaking off. Global sea levels on the rise. Small islands are being submerged. Scientists are looking for ways to stop this process. Scientists have calculated that if the entire ice cover melts, the global sea level will rise by at least 60 to 70 meters, which would mean a global catastrophe. The coastline will shift significantly, and current coastal zone of all continents will be underwater. In climatology, there is an expression: the closer to the poles, the more climate change is visible. But today we see a variety of natural anomalies at all latitudes and parallels.
What impact do glaciers have on the climate of the planet? Ice sheets reflect sunlight from the Earth's surface into space, thus limiting the absorption of solar energy by our planet. Accordingly, if the temperature rises, huge ice blocks melt and reflect less light. The Earth's surface heats up more, making more ice melt. If there were no glaciers, the average annual temperature would be much higher. Glacier melting also stimulates volcanic activity. The release of volcanoes from glacial ice grip reduces the pressure on magma and brings the eruption closer. In order to melt the entire glaciosphere, it will take 3 times the thermal energy that comes from both the sun and bowels of the Earth accumulated during 1 year period.
The World Meteorological Organization has indicated that the 20 warmest years on record have been in the past 22 years, and that 2018 was the 4th warmest one. This would mean that the past 4 years, 2015, 2016, 2017 and 2018, are also the 4 warmest years in the series. 2018 is the coolest of the 4, said in the WMO Provisional Statement on the State of the Global Climate in past year. Melting mountain glaciers. North America, Canada. Canada's glaciers in the Arctic Circle are melting so fast that they are in danger of extinction. Scientists at the University of Ottawa analyzed satellite data for the period from 1999 to 2015, tracked that over 16 years, their area has decreased by more than 1,700 square kilometers or 6%. It became clear that not a single glacier had shown any growth, and of the 1,773 glaciers studied, 1,353 had completely disappeared. South America. At the end of 2017, a huge iceberg, 350 meters long and 380 meters wide, broke off in the Torres del Paine National Park in Chile. Bolivia. Over the past decade, glaciers in Bolivia have decreased by 40%. In 2009, Bolivia closed the largest ski resort in the world, which was located on the Chacaltaya Glacier. The 18,000-year-old glacier has melted completely. Europe. The Alps are the mountain reservoir of Europe. The glaciers here provide 40% of Europe's fresh water. The alpine springs feed the major rivers, the Danube, Rhine, Po, and Rhone. In 2017, a wave of tropical heat swept across Europe, melting too much snow and ice in the Alps. A rapid melting process has begun. Already in the summer of 2018, a record shallowing was recorded in the rivers. Asia. Central Asia. About half of all glacial zones in Central Asia are located in Tajikistan. According to approximate estimates of scientists, about 1,000 glaciers of the Pamir Darvas mountain range have completely disappeared as a result of abnormal melting. Tibet. Participants in the expedition organized by the Chinese Academy of Sciences found that warming in Tibet is twice as high as the globe average. Increase in average temperatures has led not only to melting of glaciers. The area of permafrost on the highlands has decreased by 16%. 155 new lakes were formed over the past 50 years by meltwater. Africa. The climate at the tops of the African mountains of Kilimanjaro and Kenya resembled an Arctic winter, but it is known that since 1912 the Kilimanjaro glacier has melted by 80%. The snow glacial caps of these mountains have melted noticeably. Both of these mountains are strategic for Africa and feed the Congo and Nile rivers. The current melting of mountain glaciers can cause floods. The area of glaciers will become even smaller. Some of the glaciers will disappear, rivers will have no supply, and they will begin to dry up, which will lead to a freshwater shortage. The melting of glaciers will cause hydroelectric power plants to malfunction.
What we see has consequences that we already see today. We must remember that nuclear waste is in the permafrost, and its thawing may lead to an ecological catastrophe, says Boris Shishlo, a Russian-French ethnologist. Scientists call permafrost a time bomb. Thus, 70 billion tons of methane has been calculated in the world, most of which, two-thirds, has been preserved in the permafrost of Russia. Methane is a strong greenhouse gas, and the consequences of thawing permafrost and the release of so much methane into the atmosphere are difficult to predict. Indigenous people of Yakutia, Amur and Chukotka suffer from climate change. Vast swamps are the largest swamps in the world, covering an area of 13,000 square kilometers. People have lived here for more than 3,000 years, and all their activities depend on the condition of the swamps. Previously, from late November to March, people could move around them, but now the bugs are still not frozen from December to March. Only in winter can the necessary things be brought into these villages: medicine, flour, salt, etc., as there is no other communication but frozen water. As a result, since the ice is not thickening, the cars can't go through or sink into the swamp with the supplies. Wild animals can't go in the right direction and change the traditional way. In the past, animals were hibernating in November, but now bears, for example, do not sleep, become aggressive, and go into villages. This becomes a real threat to people's lives. The local population is increasingly finding the remains of mammoths and ancient plants. Due to climate change, residential buildings in the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard are becoming unstable. Buildings in Longyear are traditionally built on wooden piles based on what used to be permafrost. Now about 250 houses have to be demolished. This is a lot for a city with a population of 2,200 people. Thawing permafrost is a problem for buildings and infrastructure and causes coastal erosion throughout the circumpolar north. Longyear is located 1,300 kilometers beyond the Arctic Circle. The permafrost breaks rapidly on the northwest territory of Canada, which has 83,000 square kilometers. Whole layers of unfreezed ground transform into mud filled with carbon. This mud, when getting into water, impacts negatively fish, disturbs development of aquatic plants. Also, the process of melting leads to landslides, which can change the landscape significantly. Speed of the permafrost melting is more than expected.
Greenland is the biggest island in the world, covering more than 2 million square kilometers. With only 56,000 inhabitants, 85% of the island is covered with rapidly melting glaciers. Loss of ice mass in Greenland increases from 34 gigatons per year in 1992 to 2001 to 215 gigatons per year in 2002 to 2011 and 286 in 2017. Scientists observed the ice of Greenland for 3 decades. Area of big ice shield melting increases in 97% in July 2012. On July the 8th, it was 40%. And in July the 12th, it was 97% and reached a maximum in the history of 30 years of satellite observations. If earlier it was coastal parts of glaciers melting, then in the summer of 2012, it was the whole area of the island ice shield melting. In June 2017, Greenland experienced the earthquake magnitude of 4.0 caused by glaciers falling. Following tsunami washed away 11 houses. The same year in July, 150 kilometers northward from the Arctic Circle and less than 50 kilometers from the board of the Greenland ice shield, peat ignition occurred. According to the scientists' opinion, the climate changes have caused ice-cover depletion that have led, in its turn, to the peat heating and igniting. Area of 1,250 hectares was burned. Experts argue that there was no ignition detected in the glacier area for the past several decades. This fire have become the strongest in the history of observation. July the 17th, 2018, parts of the biggest Helheim glacier broke away and floated close to the shore of Innasuit village. Height of the huge ice formation was as 30-story building and about 6.5 kilometers in length. Locals were evacuated by the government of Greenland. International scientist team found an explanation of abnormal Greenland glaciers melting. They received the data confirming the hypothesis that processes within the interior of the planet have influence on the glacier's mass decrease as the climate change do. For 10 years, scientists measured temperature and salt content in 2 places of the island. Explorers calculated that quantity of deep earthly heat released in this region can be compared with some huge heater working inside the glacier. No doubt that deep heat of Earth influenced the movement of ice cover, explained the exploration director Søren Rusgaard. We suppose the same thermal energy release processes from the depth of the Earth happen under most of the ice shield in northeast part of Greenland.
Gravitation and ice. Geophysical processes are interconnected and complicated. Jerry Mitrovica, professor of geophysics in Harvard, explains interconnection of ice and gravitation as follows. According to law of attraction, ice shield attracts surrounding water as moon and sun. When a man's ice shield, for example like Greenland, melts, 3 things occur. 1. All water melt is going into the ocean. Ocean mass increases. 2. Glacier gravitational pull to surrounding water decreases. As a result, the water moves away from the ice shield. 3. As the ice melts, the ground levels up underneath. Gravitation has a huge impact. When ice shield melts, sea level drops down nearby. So, if the ice of Greenland disappears tomorrow, sea level in Iceland, Swiss, Norway, all are situated within 2,000 kilometers of Greenland, drops. If the ice shield of Antarctica melts, sea level drops close to it. But it rises more than one could expect in the northern hemisphere. Every ice shield has its own geometry.
Greetings, dear ALLATRA TV viewers. I'm Vladimir Alexiev, photographer and explorer. The last 3 years, I worked on the photo project, The Mystery of Water Crystals. It results in a book I hold in my hands now. While working on the book, the project, I had the fortune to visit the coldest remote places of our Earth, Arctica and Antarctica. I have seen many interesting things related to glaciers, their real condition, snow, people, and ecological situation in general. To be honest, I was astonished with changes happened even in 3 years I was working on this project. I have seen huge changes, and what locals or people who come to this region periodically said makes one think about it very seriously. Something makes me stuck in Greenland. Greenland is poorly inhabited due to severe life conditions, and some villages are without routes, lonely so to say. It could be no other locality within a several thousand kilometer near the village. In these Greenland villages, people face the situation when several years ago, even in summer, in shipping season, when there is a navigation, approaches to fords where those villages are situated was totally covered with ice. But now the situation I have witnessed is that there is no ice at all. For several years already. There's no ice. Water rises and people are facing a threat to lose their homes. I have seen houses in the front line which were almost, of course they were all on piles, but even in the summer months, that seemed to be so warm, they were half flooded. I sailed Greenland on the ice-class yacht and talked with the captain. By the way, he set a world record. He was the first who sailed around the North Pole for one navigation season. And we fell into talk around situation with ice. Because he navigates often Arctic waters in Spitsbergen, Franz Josef, land, Iceland, Greenland, we talked about ice conditions. He voiced an interesting hypothesis. Firstly, he shared his observation that ice melts catastrophically. Literally 7 to 8 years ago, his own observation was, for example, on Spitsbergen. They met nothing but ice, where it was many bears and other animals. Now in that region, there's not only isolated ice, but no ice at all. So guys, navigate to the north of Spitsbergen in the middle of navigation season. It's very strange. I navigated on the sailing boat, bark called Europe, Old Holland sailing ship, that do training navigation in different regions of the planet, and in Antarctica too. I got a sailor job on this boat, and together we went to Scottish Isles first, then to the coast off of Antarctica till Ukrainian polar station, Vernadsky, and a little bit further as ice allowed. I was a little bit astonished while talking with biologists from Vernadsky station. He shared observation about strange things with the penguins. Never in the history of observations, in the history of Antarctic stations existed on the 6th continent, scientists observed that. The point is that penguins, different colonies of different penguins, migrate. They leave their usual places, having lived there for decades, and migrate to the southern region. What is it about? It is about very serious climate changes, and it is felt not only by people, It is seen not only by inhabitants of Greenland, for example, or some other severe region, but animals feel it too. Actually, huge migration occurs. Not only penguins, but whales and other marine animals migrate too. Or here, for example, in the Antarctic, there was another interesting case. We anchored at one of the islands, and I talked with our cook on ship. He has been going on the same ship every year, in the same season, to the same places, along the same route for about 10 years. And so he told a very interesting thing to me. He showed me where the glacier was 4 years ago. It's hard to believe, but from the place that he showed me to the place where the glacier was earlier, it was about 8 kilometers. It is a vast area, and it is shocking how fast ice melts. Apparently it happens not in Antarctica, but in Antarctica too. It means the ice melts in both poles, in the South Pole the same as in the North Pole. It happens so rapidly and cannot be unobserved by the people, not local, but even those who come to these places from year to year. It surely makes us think. We live in our apartments. We see some news or information on TV about climate change. But we cannot imagine the scope of these events until we face them ourselves. Due to my work on the photo project, I was busy for the past few years. I saw everything firsthand, and I can confirm really the scale of environmental changes. The situation with ice, the situation with glacier melting is catastrophic. You know, it is the most responsible and right moment for us to make sense of what is happening. Really accept this information, understand what some inexplicable and uncontrollable changes happens with our planet, and the scale of these changes increases from year to year. People have to unite facing the global climate changes. Unite in spirit, because the only way to survive the coming climate changes altogether is to unite. And there is no doubt already that it is coming.
Antarctica consists of two shields, western and eastern. Almost the entire continent is covered with huge ice layer. Its average thickness is 1500 to 3000 meters. The mean altitude above sea level is 2300 meters. Antarctica is the highest continent on Earth. Antarctica was discovered last of the continents on Earth, and it still keeps many secrets. Antarctica, that has any tree on its surface, keeps many secrets. In the ice cover of Antarctica, the data about climate and atmosphere content of past 100,000 years was found to be recorded. Investigations by English and American scientists show almost 3 trillion of tons of ice lost by Antarctica in the last quarter century. According to satellite data, the average level of world ocean increased by 7 centimeters in the last 25 years. It was growing by about 3 millimeters a year. Scientists consider rates of ocean water rising will accelerate in time because of global temperature rising and ice melting. Approximate calculations according to tides confirm expectations, but don't allow to measure correctly the acceleration. Satellite data allow to do this because fixation of the water level occurs in the open space and not on the coastal zone. Today, we see the consequences of this. It was found 2 islands have gone under the water in the Pacific Ocean, Hawaii and Japan in autumn 2018. We talked about that in the 17th and the 18th breaking news.
Ice has the ability to flow. We, people, Philistines, do not understand that because we know how ice breaks, throw a piece of ice and it breaks. In fact, ice has a totally different properties, and in a large mass, it is flowing. Flowing like dough. The form of Antarctica, ideal form, is a loaf of bread. If you put the dough on the table, it will spread and become such a loaf. We call it a loaf. More on top, less by the sides. It is how Antarctica is set up. It has 3,700 meters in height in the center, and it comes down towards the sea where it is about zero. The average annual temperature is minus 55 degrees Celsius. It means minus 80 degrees Celsius in the winter and minus 30 degrees Celsius in summer, no less than minus 30 degrees Celsius. Fallen snow does not melt. It can't melt because of continuous cold. Of course, snow occurs, not so often, but it happens. And it deposits on the surface of the ice continuously. Where else can it go? Nowhere. It is lying with heavy weight, and the ice, property of the ice, moves. Surely it has to move. And it moves, begins to spread, and the loaf is formed and spread. Slowly, when it comes to the sea, ice is lighter than the water. It rises and spreads into the sea. And here some force appears, wind and high temperatures, and it breaks. This is how icebergs are formed. Icebergs say nothing about the climate. They carve off anyway, warm or cold. They carve off and they begin to drift across the sea. And now some huge icebergs carve off, kilometers wide icebergs. So when it is said that breaking of icebergs is a sign of warming, it is not. No relation to the warming, it is because it is natural. In this fashion, ice cover unloads itself the same way in Greenland and Europe. But if some processes in Antarctica will occur, a huge mass of ice can get off in Western Antarctica to rising sea level up to 5 meters. It could be drama for sure. If Antarctica ice cover melt, the ocean level will rise approximately on 70 to 75 meters. The level of whole ocean will rise. What does it mean? Holland is completely flooded. St. Petersburg is completely flooded. The same with New York, etc. We drew such a map. You see, the climate changes consistently. It becomes colder or warmer. Present warming is a real thing. It is happening really. It began in the middle of the 19th century. It is actually known for sure. The warming began to impact the glaciers. And the glaciers, before that it was a cold period, we call it Small Ice Age. It was approximately in the 16th to 17th centuries. Very cold time it was. Russian annals describe all this, and I have read them. Yes, it was a bad harvest in Russia. It was a very difficult time when there were no crops at all because of the cold. And it is a reflection of the whole period. And glaciers have begun to move forward because of the cold. And suddenly, retreat have begun in the middle of the 19th century. It was not even sometimes more, sometimes less. I remember even in my times, 60s of the past century, when glaciers, on the contrary, began to move forward again. So what I want to say, in the middle of the 19th century, there was no such an industrial development. Nothing but all this happened. So when it is said that present warming is due to humanity, my opinion, and not only mine, that it is absolutely wrong. There are natural drivers of the warming, first of all. There are many of them, not all of them known for us, but they exist. They control the nature. But there are also anthropogenic factors that has an influence. But we cannot separate. We have no such instruments. For example, global temperature. Let's say average temperature across the Earth increased by about 0.7 degrees Celsius. It seems not much, but really enough. 0.7. But we have no instruments to separate how much is because of natural reasons and how much because of anthropogenic. No such. No one has found yet how it can be separated. So to claim that it is only anthropogenic problems is too right. So to claim that it is only anthropogenic problems is not right. To say that it is only natural problems and human have no impact is not right either. But we cannot detect the proportion of each, and it is crucial importance. So we don't know exactly what's next. Yes, there are many models built. These models show almost plus 5 degrees Celsius at the end of our century. All this, you know what the model is? You get what you put in. If we do not know something, it is absent in the model, so it gives us a result based on our knowledge. So we know not everything yet, and to say that the warming will continue is not reasonable, I think. Yes, the warming is present now, and there are hotheads who think it will continue and we should be prepared for that. But it is interesting, really. It is another scale of time, but now it is the coldest period on Earth if we look for millions of years. The coldest. Can you imagine? It is the coldest in average. There was no such a cold in the past. But I think we should be careful, because really no one knows what is waiting for us in the future. And the science cannot forecast this yet. So much drivers for the climate change and therefore reasons for glacier changes. Yes, glaciers are retreating now, retreating wildly. With all the power human has now, skills, all inventions, power, he can do nothing with the events are happening in nature. Nothing. And it is real fortune. Fortune because such a natural machine is operating on Earth. What it consists of: land, ocean, atmosphere and glacial loadings. These are 4 constituents. They are working on Earth in some way, balancing all of the natural processes, so nothing can develop itself to break this balance created by nature. This vehicle is so well established, so enormous, that happily, a man in a pygmy now, maybe a man will reach someday such a height that he can fight nature, but God save from that. We are so far from that now. So to say some human CO2 can change natural processes, no, I don't believe this. So you can speak about that, but it is absolutely different mathematically. Different scales, scales of total impact. What is the source of all of this? Solar energy? It is not comparable with anything, with any energy we can produce, neither atomic nor any others. Because this flow is so huge, but balanced by distance and everything else, we can't feel it and see it. Thank God. And it was 10,000 years ago when there was a glacier in Moscow. All over the space of Moscow, suburbs were covered with glacier.
What is the reason of that change? You said 10,000 years ago, but could it happen again?
It is a complicated story with cycles. The climate of the Earth has a distinctive feature. It can't be constant. It changes continuously. Many reasons for that. The first of all is solar energy. Sun is not constant in the shadow. Energy flows from the sun is constantly changing here. Circulation of the atmosphere, the position of Earth in the space is influencing too. Many reasons present. And all this leads to climate cycling. Not anything we know, not everything we can predict. We should be prepared for anything.
And how should we prepare?
How? The economy should. But first of all, you know, mine should be prepared.
At the time when we should unite, sit together and think, realizing that in the near future there will be not that plenty of space and territories, and we'll have to survive somehow, to develop technologies, and we should consolidate in the world and as one united family. Now we are being divided more and more, right? And we perceive this as normal, as natural, because in the future, will there be problems or won't be any? Well, it's not a big deal that the climate will change. So what? So far it's good. And when it changes completely, well, we'll come up with something, we'll live. No, you won't be able to solve anything then. That's the way it will be. Well, isn't that right?
It is. The system postpones everything for later, while at this moment it itself...
Well, why have I given this macro example? On both the micro and macro scales, everything is fractal. The system works according to predefined patterns. Do you think anyone in Atlantis believed they would perish? Or didn't they know about it? Everything started to collapse exactly the same way.
What is happening is one of the cycles which we are entering into, and it is inevitable.
Ice shelves of Antarctica melt actively. Massive parts of ice shelves broke away for the past 20 years in different regions of Antarctica, and it is continuing. Iceberg ice getting into salt water and interacting with it melts actively. But glaciers are melting not only because of water and air temperature rise. Research team from the University of Edinburgh have found 91 volcanoes under the ice of Antarctica. These volcanoes are from 100 to 3,850 meters in height. We did not expect to find something like this. We have multiplied by 3 the number of known volcanoes in Western Antarctica. We suggest also that there are more volcanoes on the seabed under the Ross ice shelf. That is why I suppose the most concentrated volcano area in the world will be discovered in this region, emphasised Robert Bingham, glaciers expert. If eruption of one of these volcanoes begins, it would destabilise all total Antarctic ice sheet, mentioned one of the authors of Exploration. Now scientists are exploring activity of discovered volcanoes.
Micro-level processes are considered as one of the causes of climate change. According to new data from ANITA, unusually powerful vertical neutrino beams from unknown source penetrate Antarctica. In June 2018, physicians working in Antarctica obtained and processed results from latest flight of the probe that registered neutrino. Now scientists are occupied with their interpretation. Neutrino is a special particle. Beams of neutrino penetrate Earth, Sun, cosmic space, and other space objects, and they are carriers of very special information about the state of these objects due to all-penetrating ability.
The latest research in the field of the physics of elementary particles, neutrino geophysics, and neutrino astrophysics, which was conducted by a working team of scientists of ALLATRA International Public Movement, offers increased opportunities for advanced, fundamental, and applied research. The study has revealed that cosmic factors play a significant role in the activation of the internal dynamics of the Earth. Thanks to the knowledge of the primordial ALLATRA physics, it has become possible not only to fundamentally study behavior of neutrino coming from the Earth's interior and the septum field of the Earth, to find out new specific correlations, but also develop new methods of forecasting volcanic eruptions and study more accurately present magmatic formations of geodynamic environments. Furthermore, it becomes possible to influence directly on these processes by means of climatic and volcanic geoengineering. Thanks to the primordial ALLATRA physics, it is possible to say that nowadays, controlling natural processes is real for sure. For more details, see the report on the problems and consequences of global climate change on Earth, effective ways to solve these problems. Scientists have counted more than a dozen of potential feedbacks, which could force it or provoke a domino effect. I mean physical and biochemical effects that could push our system to the condition of heated Earth. Which will become, so to say, hostile to humans and civilization. What are these feedbacks? First of all, it is melting of permafrost. It is the most dangerous feedback. Scientists say we have passed the point of no return about a year or two ago. So to say, we cannot come back to the state when most of the surface of the Arctic Ocean was covered with old ice. It will be a one-year ice appearing in winter and melting in summer. It will be free from ice, so to say. So what? But again, there are consequences. If no ice, Alberta decreases. Arctic Ocean seawater heats up more. Therefore, more gas hydrates are freed. Can you see one begins to overlap with other? The domino effect. Next is melting of the Greenland ice sheet. It is occurring with tremendous rate now. I can tell you some numbers that are beyond imagination, and people do not worry. The Greenland ice sheet loses 170 trillion tons per year. It's a huge number. This leads to additional effect of ocean's level rise. This leads to some physics mechanics. Heat exchange in the oceans between equatorial and polar regions will weaken. Now I won't explain why. Let's say it leads to, let's assume, Gulf Stream. All the Greenland ice sheet will melt. Obviously, it will lead ocean's level to rise 1 meter more additionally. 1 meter more. From where scientists get there, this will happen, that will happen. Are they looking at the ceiling and come up with that? No, climatology exists. Nowadays, it is fairly accurate science, using complicated mathematical models that are computed with the most advanced supercomputers. And these are the results of such a computing translated into a language everyone can understand. It is clear that popularization is necessary. It needs to be explained, and it can be addressed, in my opinion, to what all we have is natural, caring about next generations. If you would not change, would not act, and will keep in mind not how to build a new house, not how to buy a new faster car, etc., but you will think what world you leave to your children. After all, what about the majority think? I will leave to my children a car, a house, money in bank account. Isn't it so? But it will be clear that our children will need no car, no house when it happens, this pit. They would just curse previous generations saying, it was possible to stop it then. They did not stop it. They had lived for pleasures. They didn't think about us. If you want to leave this world comfortable, stop. Stop. But we got used to. You know, we live in the past. We live by inertia, but inertia fails now. But we had lived this way okay, isn't it? Okay. And we live now as our fathers and grandfathers. But the world is changing fast. The world becomes completely different.
What exactly is heating up Earth so fast? To date, two factors are found influencing the climate change. They are anthropogenic factor and cosmic processes. Certainly, the anthropogenic factor is present, but it has solely political and commercial nature. Human activity on the planetary level has a negative impact on the environment for sure. But this impact is minimal compared to what is going on the planet as a result of natural factors' complex influence, which will increase in the near future and which are subject of warnings from honest scientists from all over the world. Anthropogenic effect is not the cause of massive planetary cataclysms, so far for the reasons mentioned above. The global climate change happens under circumstances independent of humanity and require real efforts, consolidation of all people on the planet for the sake of civilization's survival in the near future. And every inhabitant of the planet should think about that. Scientists in the past years have made mistakes not considering influences of increasing universe acceleration, cosmic factors, astronomic processes on global climatic system of the planet. All this has an impact not only on the Sun, but also on solar system planets, including such a giant as Jupiter, not to mention our planet. The global climate change on Earth is mainly the result of astronomic processes and their cyclical nature. This cycling is inevitable. Geological history of our planet shows us numerous times when the Earth was going through such global climate change phases.
A little time will pass. A piece of paper, it will remain a piece of paper. I will not even mention these cryptocurrencies or something else. It will all disappear in an instant. And what then? But humanity, which would be able to unite in love and respect as one family, which it should be in fact. All this humanity, it would be able to withstand anything. It is clear that in any case it is too late to turn the history around and do something. No matter how much we want it, we will not be able to come to that. We have passed that time for everything to go smoothly, and so that there would be no catastrophes. There will be. This is already inevitable. The question is how we will get through this period of time. With what outcome?